Well, this is not a personal story, but it's called Lucky. Lucky couldn't believe how beautiful upstate New York was. The rolling hills and the farmland was like a patchwork quilt he had seen in a book once. And that perfect blue sky with those puffy white clouds, it's like whipped cream on a sundae. But when was the last time he had a sundae? Probably when he was a kid and he found that $20 bill in the alley behind his apartment building in Brooklyn. He remembered walking into the store and asking for an ice cream sundae with whipped cream and a cherry on top. The store owner sort of gave him a dirty look until he saw the 20 in his hand. And when he walked out, he felt like he was on top of the world. I mean, he was the richest 9-year-old that he knew. As he walked, he began to daydream. What could he do with the rest of the money? And when he walked down the short flight of stairs to his small basement apartment, he reached into his pocket to make sure the money was really there, that it wasn't a dream. It was. Then he reached to a key that was looped around a string that was around his neck. He opened the door. The apartment was cluttered with junk, and it smelled of garbage that should have been taken out maybe a week earlier. The lights were off and everything was dark. But this apartment never got much light anyway. It was the basement apartment, of course. So he reached for a small lamp that was set on a side table, and he turned the switch. Nothing happened. So he walked to the wall and tried that switch. It didn't work either. That's when he heard noises from the bedroom that startled him. Then his mother's voice, "Lucky! Lucky, is that you?" He walked into the room, and his mother was in bed weeping. The room had a strong smell of alcohol, but that wasn't unusual. Sobbing, she told him that she had been fired from her job at the Five and Dime. They had accused her of drinking on the job. And to make matters worse, Con Edison had turned off their electric. And she began to sob louder, and the sobs turned into screams. And he tried to tell her that everything was going to be okay because he was rich now. And he reached into his pocket and he gave her all the money he had. She took the money and she looked at it and she screamed even louder, and she threw it against the wall, and then she grabbed everything she could and she threw everything that she could against the wall. And Lucky ran and he hid under the bed, and while he trembled and sobbed, he could hear glass shattering against the walls and floor. That's the last time Lucky Pavano saw his mother. After that, he went from foster home to foster home. Some foster parents were nice. Others were mean and cruel. And somehow, no one wanted to keep him. They found a way to send him to a new place. The last place that he was in was a group home. And that's where he was able to finish high school and learn a thing or two about fixing cars. But when he was 18, he was out on his own. Mostly he slept in his 2001 Dodge Neon that he bought for a couple $100 the last year at the group home, with a few part-time jobs he had gotten. As far as the car, he fixed a few things that were wrong with it. It still ran a little rough. The engine leaked oil, so he had to keep a few cans in the trunk. And he managed to get a few meaningful jobs, mostly part-time, so there was never enough money for anything, just maybe a little food, a little gas, oil, a trip to the Salvation Army for something every now and then. That's about it. Washing up for him was done in a McDonald's restroom. And that was becoming increasingly difficult because the workers were getting onto him, so they were chasing him away all the time. He knew it was time to leave the city when he was confronted by the manager of the McDonald's on Flatbush Avenue and threatened with the police. That's when he started thinking about that very kind worker at the group home, Helen. She had always raved about this place she was from in upstate New York, a little place called Cloverdale. Heaven with a blinking light in the middle, she would say. And she told him that if he ever got tired of the city, he should drive up there, and she was sure her parents would give him a job at the dairy farm because they were always looking for good help. He thought, well, what did he have to lose? So he got into the Neon, he drove to the gas station, filled up the tank, and with the few bucks he had left, he bought a large bottle of Coke and 2 Kit Kat bars. And he looked at a map. He knew the best way to get up to Cloverdale. He didn't even bother to stop at that car wash that he was working at because they would just find another chump to take his place. So without much fanfare, he crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. He got on the northbound FDR Drive to make the connection with the thruway. After driving several hours, he exited the highway because he knew he couldn't pay for the tolls that were coming up. The local roads were going to be just fine. And as he drove on those roads, he could not believe the beauty he was seeing. He slowly sipped that Coke. Kit Kats would be lunch and dinner. I mean, he felt incredible. How could a place be so beautiful, he thought. It was really amazing. He felt lucky, but he knew he wasn't. That was just some stupid name. It wasn't even his nickname, it was his given name. His mother told him that when she got pregnant, his dad insisted to name him Lucky. Maybe the kid will be lucky, maybe he won't be a loser like his old man, he told her. See, his dad had been a small-time hustler and gambler who was always running from somebody. The last time Lucky saw his dad was when he was about 7. His mom was asleep on the sofa, and Lucky was sitting next to her watching cartoons on TV, and his dad called him to the door quietly and whispered, "Hey, Champ, I'm going to the corner to get some cigarettes. Take care of your mom, kiddo." He never saw his dad again. His mother said that he had been killed by mobsters, but he had heard adults talk and whisper that he had run off with another woman. Well, regardless of the reason, that's when his mother began to drink more and more until the day she had the breakdown. Then she was gone too. He was starting to forget what they actually looked like. He didn't know if they were alive or dead. They were becoming a distant memory. And it wasn't a good memory. So no, he wasn't lucky. That was just a friggin' name given to him by a loser, a quitter. Bad memories leave a bad taste. But they were slowly being sweetened by the beauty of the New York countryside. As he drove and he looked at the cows and the horses that dotted the distant hills, he thought more about Helen, the worker at the group home, of her stories of Cloverdale. She talked often about her parents, who ran the Kramer Dairy that they had inherited from her grandparents. Helen had grown up with a younger sister, and the two girls did a lot of work on the farm, but the hard work was done by the hired hands. But these guys were not reliable. When the work got too hard, they would just quit. They wouldn't even give notice. So she told them that she felt very guilty when she left the farm, but her parents encouraged her to pursue her dreams of becoming an actress. So the job at the group home, that was just to pay the bills until her dreams could become reality. So he had so much on his mind. I mean, again, he felt like he was in a dream. This was so surreal. Then suddenly, he heard a screeching sound from above, and he looked up, and he saw a red-tailed hawk against a turquoise sky. He had never seen one before, only in a book. And he followed that hawk until it landed on a dead oak tree. He was mesmerized. But then he realized he was driving, so he looked back at the road and realized that he had gone into the oncoming lane. He drifted on, and he was a few feet away from hitting an Amish carriage. The young couple in the carriage, they were shouting and waving their arms, and Lucky screamed, and he turned the wheel as hard as he could, and he blacked out. And when he came to, the Neon was upside down in a ditch. He was in pain, but nothing was broken. So he managed to crawl out of the window, and he crawled to the nearest hill. And when he couldn't move anymore, he just lay there on his back, staring up at that peaceful blue sky. Then he saw the young couple running to him to see if he was okay. And then he noticed other people running toward him. As they got closer, he saw that it was a middle-aged couple and a young woman who looked an awful lot like Helen. And they had these polo shirts with the words Kramer Dairy on them. The young woman knelt beside him, and she held his hand, and with a concerned look in her beautiful brown eyes, she asked if he was okay. He nodded yes, but he didn't want to let go of that warm, soft hand. And just then, he heard a screech from above, and he looked, and there was the hawk, streaking across that perfect blue sky like a shooting star. Maybe his luck was starting to change.